Well, Danyal Hussein has just been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 35 years. So that's 35 years that he must serve in prison before he is even eligible for consideration for parole. This does not mean, of course, that at 35 years of a sentence that he will be released, but he will at least be potentially eligible for parole. There was no chance of a whole life tariff, in other words, that this young man would spend the rest of his life behind bars because of the fact that he was under 21 at the time of the murders, 18 in fact, just a few days after his 18th birthday, when he went to Friant Country Park in northwest London, where two sisters, Bibaa Henry and Nicole Smallman, had been out with a group of friends celebrating Bibaa's 46th birthday and also celebrating a partial lifting of lockdown. The group of friends had been partying in the park for most of the afternoon into the evening. When the friends drifted off, the two sisters decided to stay on a bit longer. They were dancing into the evening, filming themselves taking selfies with fairy lights as the darkness descended. Unbeknownst to them, of course, was the fact that Danyal Hussein was out in that park as well, looking for victims. A really bizarre aspect of this case is that he had made a pact with the devil. He'd written a letter to Satan where he had promised to sacrifice 6 women every 6 months in turn for having better luck on the lottery. He'd even gone out after he murdered these two sisters to buy lottery tickets. So deluded was he about the possibility he thought that he was going to win the lottery. The case did ask questions of his mental health. The judge said that there was a psychiatric report, and although that did assess that there was autistic spectrum disorder, that did not really hold account for the fact that he had committed such a horrific crime. There were no other significant mental health issues diagnosed, although he has refused to cooperate with psychiatrists throughout this process as well. He has continued to be arrogant to the last. He was appearing via a video link from Belmarsh Crown Court, or Belmarsh Prison actually, where he is at the moment, sitting or perching on a chair there. He turned side on to the camera, paying no attention to the judge, Mrs. Justice Whipple, as she read out those sentencing remarks, the aggravating factors of the fact that he has not admitted culpability for this crime, that he claimed it was someone else, despite the letter to the devil in his own handwriting, signed indeed in his own blood. And the fact also, during this frenzied knife attack on the two sisters, he cut himself, and there was blood all over the crime scene. Despite the undeniable burden of evidence against him, he maintained his innocence, that it simply wasn't him to the last, which, according to the judge, just compounded the anxiety and trauma for the family, not only having to cope with the knowledge that their loved ones were murdered in such a horrific way, but having to listen to this young man and observe his bizarre behaviour throughout this trial. Well, I've been looking back at what has been an absolutely horrific and disturbing case. Well, this has been obviously a very, very difficult and traumatic case for the family of these two sisters, not just having to deal with the news of the horrific way in which the two sisters were murdered that night back in June of last year, but also absorbing the way in which the Metropolitan Police responded to their initial very anxious calls about the fact that the sisters were missing. That lacklustre response that the Independent Office for Police Conduct said was below standard. Now, as I said in that report, the Met Commissioner, under more pressure, has issued or tried to issue an apology to the family, but the mother of the two sisters has rejected that apology. She says the time for apologies has long gone. Now, I should say we are waiting to hear from the mother of the two sisters, Nicole Smallman. She is a former archdeacon with the Church of England. She will be coming out onto the steps of the court to give her reaction to the sentence today, and no doubt allude to the issues around the Metropolitan Police as well, not just, of course, the issue around their lacklustre initial response, but the very disturbing issue of two police officers who should have been guarding the crime scene, instead taking selfies next to the sisters' bodies. They are due to appear at court here at the Old Bailey next week, and we understand, according to their lawyers, in a previous court hearing, they intend to plead guilty to that crime. We will also be hearing from the detective inspector in charge of this murder investigation, Maria Green, who will be appearing, we understand, alongside Nicole Smallman as they come out to give their reaction to the news that Danyal Hussein, that 19-year-old Satanist who made this bizarre pact with the devil and then went on to murder these two beautiful sisters, has been sentenced to life with a recommendation that he serves a minimum of 35 years behind bars before there's even any talk of him being eligible for parole.